good morning. Let's welcome Luke Hampson, the Managing Director of Nimy Resources with ASX ticker code NIM, Nelly India Mike. Luke is here to talk to us about the exciting discoveries at the Mons Project. You see, the Mons Project has recently yielded significant findings, particularly at the Masson prospect, where drilling has uncovered expanding massive sulfide mineralisation containing copper, nickel, cobalt, and platinum group elements. These developments highlight the promising future of the Mons Project and its potential impact on Nimy Resources' position in the Western Australia mineral sector. Welcome, Luke. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Gia. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, look, I'm very curious. Let's dive right in. First and foremost, can you give me and our viewers a quick introduction to Nimy Resources? I mean, what does your company do and what's your main focus?
Okay, so Nimy Resources first listed late 2022, so we're just over 3 years old. We're a explorer exploring a greenstone belt previously unidentified in Western Australia, the Yilgarn Craton. Now, that belt is around 90 kilometres north-south and about 30 kilometres across. So majority of it's undercover, hence why it hasn't been discovered before. That's the main reason for it. But it is only about 400 k's north east of Perth, so it's not far at all. Just north of, along the Forestania belt, if you like, and then north of Southern Cross, and then up to the you and me complex up there. So in a really good spot, and amazing that it wasn't found before. In terms of what we've been about, we've been the last 3 years in particular, we've been exploring that greenstone belt to find out what's there. Initially, it was komatiites hosting nickel, which we discovered, large, thick komatiite flows. But the bit that's piqued our interest of late has been the northern part of those tenements. So a different geological setting than the komatiites in the south, and that's where the Masson discovery was made. And that's predominantly copper, nickel, cobalt, PGE, as you mentioned. And it's an unusual setting, certainly not like Kalgoorlie, where you're looking at the komatiite-hosted nickel. This is probably more a magmatic mineralisation style. So, yeah, an unusual find and really promising at this point in time. And a lot of work going on there. And the other one, I suppose, that we're focusing on is our gallium find, which we'll talk about a little bit more as we go through.
Yes, everyone seems to be loving gallium at the moment. Well, look, I'd love to learn a bit more. I mean, can you tell us a bit about the latest discoveries at the Mons Project? I mean, what makes this so exciting?
Well, I'll start with Masson. So Masson came about from we did a large-scale EM survey, helicopter-borne EM survey. And we did that to cover a lot of ground and find any conductive responses. And we narrowed it down for about 239 responses in the area, which was a lot, but that's probably 1,500 square kilometres at least. And we went after two. One was at Masson, one is at Block 3, which is ironically where the gallium is. So followed up with moving loop, able to detect some conductive material underneath and drilled it, and hence the discovery was made. In terms of what's exciting about it, again, I'll go back to it, it's a magmatic, of magmatic origin, if you like. Predominantly copper, but with enough nickel in there and PGEs and cobalt to make it interesting. There's also some silver in it, low levels of gold. So it's not your traditional Western Australian komatiite hosted nickel. It's more probably in the Nova Savannah type. And that's at a stretch there because we're doing a lot of work with CSIRO to actually identify that mineralisation style. So it's presenting, as around 160 metre strike down hole. It starts at about probably 100 metres and gets to about 300. And the envelope's around about 40 metres across. So, and this is just the start of it. That's open in all directions. So that's a pretty exciting find. And the gallium, I suppose, there's a fair bit of excitement around gallium, and there's a fair bit of education going on around gallium because no one had heard of it, including us when the assays came through and we saw the numbers that were in there, and we thought, well, that's unusual. Did a bit of research on what gallium was, and found that the market was shifting for gallium. And so we put a little bit of attention into actually educating ourselves as to what was going on there. And it's an very unusually high grade of gallium. And as it happens, the world is moving in strange directions, and gallium is in sharp focus. So those two, copper, gallium, a
Yep.
pretty good combination at the moment. So I think that's pretty exciting for us. Mm.
And Luke, you've mentioned the word magmatic a few times already.
Mm.
And for
Yeah.
somebody who didn't pay attention in geology, could you,
Mm.
and geography, could you educate us on what that terminology really means?
Yeah, I suppose if I really cut it down, what we're finding at this stage, and again, the CSIRO studies are ongoing in terms of and that comes under the banner of the nickel mineral indicator studies that we're doing.
Mhm.
So what we're finding is it's of magmatic origin, if you like, and it appears that it is mafic hosted, other than the ultramafic hosted rocks that we get out in the Kalgoorlie area, the nickel ones. And it again, if you go down to Nova, that was gabbronorite, which is a similar type mafic to a rock. So that's what's unusual about it is it's not orthomagmatic as we see, so it's not sort of a hydrothermal or anything else like that. It's a pure play in that sense.
Mhm.
And again, all of these things that's what the studies are about, but that's the early findings that we've got, and we've managed to identify pentlandite and chalcopyrite in particular, so a nickel sulfide and an important nickel sulfide and an important copper sulfide being the chalcopyrite. So yeah, it is early days, but it's the studies that CSIRO are coming up with, and they're doing some really good work, and it's advancing our knowledge, and it informs us a bit on the mineralization that we've seen. Is there a proximal accumulation of it? So, we've drilled and we've got it in all of the holes that are there. So which direction is it going in? We're also doing structural studies and that sort of thing. So, if it's a traditional komatiite, it'd be a komatiite flow. And you'd probably be able to map that out pretty well, but this is a little bit different.
Okay. And look, you mentioned both times that, gallium and obviously copper, and you recently have found high-grade copper at the Masson prospect. What does
Yeah.
this mean for Nimy Resources?
Well, it means a lot more than nickel at the moment. I'll say that, which is what we were looking for in the southern part of the tenement.
Yep.
And it's a bit fortuitous, if you like, because the projections around copper in particular are fairly promising. Going forward in terms of, I've seen crazy numbers on the amount of mines that need to be opened up to actually meet the demand.
Mhm.
So, right time, right place in a way, and unexpected in the context. If we were looking at komatiite, it's probably not see much copper, but because we're looking at a different style mafic hosted, then we're looking at potentially a lot more copper than nickel, and that's what we're seeing in the drill hole. So that bit of it's good, but copper itself seems to have a pretty good outlook.
Brilliant. And now let's segue into gallium. Look, we know that
Mhm.
gallium at the moment is a critical metal, and you have made a big discovery at Block 3 East. So
Mm.
why is this important to us?
Well, again, we've educated ourselves on gallium since the
Mhm.
discovery.
Sure.
It's important in terms of it's really about the demand that's coming through and the lack of supply. So, it's market dynamics around the gallium to a large degree.
Mhm.
Up until, I think it was August 2023, when China first put some restrictions, if you like, around the export. I think
Mhm.
they followed them up late last year. So there's no gallium export coming out of China, in particular going to the US.
Yeah.
And, we've seen the projections there around, or the numbers, if you like, around gallium supply, and it was 95 to 98% of something coming out of China.
Yep.
So therefore, there's not a lot of avenue for supply. Then you couple that up with what is gallium used for, and there's this emerging market around semiconductors,
Yep.
right? And, I've seen some crazy numbers around the projections around how much gallium is going to be required in that. So it'll settle and we'll get an idea. But what's hindering an understanding of the supply and demand is I don't think there's much being bought and sold.
Mhm.
And I think for the big reason that there's no supply there. So I know in the background we've had inquiries from Taiwan, China, the US, and Japan
Okay.
around the gallium, preliminary discussions, if you like. And the semiconductor thing's one thing, AI, supercomputers, but there's also a defense force application there that, I can't put my finger on exactly what that application is because I don't know that too many people talk about it, but it seems to be in demand, which leads us to, and we'll talk about in a minute, the M2i Global agreement that we've got. It sort of really relates to gallium supply into defense applications.
And
So, yeah, go
without
on.
obviously trying to corner you, but I'm just curious, are you aware of how much gallium is currently retailing for at the moment?
That's not an easy number to find. I have seen a number just under $1,000, I think, US per
Okay.
kilo.
Yep.
Um,
Per
and
kilo,
that's
not
a
even per ton. Okay, per kilo.
no, per kilo. And that's a significant increase over the last few years.
Sure.
I did have a look at it. I've looked at it a few times, and there was a sharp drop off, I think, leading up to the August 23 Chinese ban, and
Mhm.
then it's gradually sort of taken off again, and it's well above those pre-ban pricing. So, but again, I'm not sure the market dynamics have kicked in yet. I don't know if there's enough um, actual purchases
Mhm.
have been recorded. So, it is a bit of it's almost a lull before the storm because we're
Yep.
getting all the inquiry,
Mhm.
um, and the market dynamics really aren't solidified, if you like. But you would think, given the amount of demand that we're getting, or at least inquiry into what we're doing, um, and given that gallium is being touted as, indispensable for semiconductors and defense force applications and a whole range of other things, electric cars.
Mhm.
It's in everything by the sound of it, but um, we really don't know what the volumes are going to look like going forward, other than they're going to be significantly more than what we're seeing now. And on the other side of it, supply, as far as I'm aware, we're the only ones that have established a JORC exploration target,
Yep.
and particularly at the levels that we have. So we have well in excess of we call 100 ppm or grams per ton in
Mhm.
that resource target. Now I've seen others around that are around 20, and even drill results that might be short intervals of 50, and we've
Mhm.
got numerous intervals that are above 50 meters of over 100, and peak values that I think are just under, it's about 395 grams per ton parts per million in one of the meters, and it's got a few hundred grams per ton around it. So it's very unusual. The only example that I've been able to locate, or examples, are actually in China, and they seem to be hosted very similarly. Our high grade in the fresher rock is in a chlorite schist. We're getting it in the saprolite, we're getting it in the clays, but the real high grade is in the actual fresher rock. And that typically is like an alteration sort of expression, if you like, around copper zinc, which is what we were there for in the first place. And we're still sort of working through that. But there's we've got a drill program about to start, and people are actually on site at the moment preparing for that, which will the gallium exploration target that we put out. This will infill and step out drill, so we should be able to solidify the numbers that we've got there and expand them. So look, you never know what's going to happen, but I can't see anything else there that is in the world, if you like, that is reporting the same numbers or is advanced in terms of recognizing the resource.
Yeah.
So,
And becomes as the world increasingly becomes more nationalistic, Europe
mm,
rearming themselves, the US is obviously spending heavily on defense, and
yeah,
you've already got two of the world's biggest market that's made inquiries with you. That's significant.
mm,
Which
it is. Yeah.
so in that case, we've already addressed like why gallium is already in such high demand. Anything associated with military hardware is going to be in high demand at the moment.
Mm,
Next
mm,
question. Look, we know that you've recently signed a collaboration agreement with M2i Global. How does
yeah.
this actually help Nimi's future plans?
I suppose it's a meeting of two parties with pretty aligned outcomes in mind. M2i Global are predominantly around supply of critical metals into the US Department of Defense,
Okay.
with a fair bit of interest in gallium. In terms of what we're about, we're trying to get into those overseas markets. There isn't a market for gallium in Australia, so it's going to be an export product. And I suppose we're trying to set that supply chain up, and we're trying to meet where M2i are establishing that there is demand with the parties that are demanding it. And so we're bridging the gap between where we're at now, as in establishing a JORC resource, through to actually it being in application. So there's a few bits and pieces that we're working on to make sure that we can, firm up the supply chain. And those guys are really an excellent conduit into the US because of their relationships, if you like, with the Department of Defense. So, there's a fair bit more to the agreement, but that's really the guts of it, if you like.
So
they want gallium, they're connected, and we've got gallium and we want to connect it. So,
is it almost like a
it
supply
works.
agreement? Would it be almost like a supply agreement?
Yeah, I think that's how it'll fill out. All right. What M2i are in the process of doing is setting up effectively either an offtake or a supply contract into the US. And our job is to actually get it there. So we've got to establish a JORC resource. At the same time, we're looking at the metallurgy and what's the best extraction method. And there's a few different ones there. And so that, we've got a lot of it, right, a lot more than what anyone else seems to have. So we need to extract as much of that as we can. And it's got to be commercial, obviously. So there's the processing and then into the US, into a manufacturing environment, if you like. So there's a few steps in there, but yeah, it's pretty much.
It sounds like you have the resource, there is already demand, and you're establishing distribution channels already.
That's it. Yeah.
So what's the next big steps for Nimy Resources in 2025? We're towards the end of the first quarter. So what else for the next 3?
Well, we're about to start drilling the gallium. And what we're after out of that is that we'll have a JORC resource. So right now it's a JORC exploration target, and that's based on only 5 holes. So infill, step out, extend it, really, and we're really after that high grade zone that's there because it is. It makes sense. It's contiguous, if you like. It really is. It's not all over the shop. It's in a particular type of rock and it's connected through those drill holes. So that's a pretty good start, and it is open. So that's the first bit. And as I said, we've got guys on site at the moment preparing for that drill program. So that's one part. So the gallium will continue to develop. And as a part of that too, the metallurgy will take place on the samples that come up. We're picking up samples from the last drilling program there that we're going to get the metallurgy done and extend that into what's the best processing method. So that's a real focus. In terms of Masson, we've recently completed some EM, so we're going through what that looks like, and that's the EM surveys to see if we've got more conductive bodies in and around Masson, which will direct a drilling program on the back of that. There's the thing about, so they're the 2 real focuses is let's get the gallium to a resource standard, and let's find out in particular at Masson around the copper-nickel mineralisation, where is this coming from? Is it coming from directly underneath? Is it, what's going on? So hence the structural studies, hence the indicator studies, which will give us a lot of information on that, and the backup EM. So when we drill holes at Masson, we want to be drilling in the direction that this has come from, and pick it up again. Now, having said that, we haven't actually missed mineralisation with any of the holes that are there along that strike. So we're a pretty good chance anyway. In the background, there are, I would say, 5, structurally anyway, geological zones, if you look at, in addition to Masson, that look very similar. And we've done some EM on 2 of those, and we've picked up conductor plates, so drill targets. And there's the other couple there. The VTEM was done on that, so we've got to narrow down exactly what's the best area there to do some ground mag. So the upside on the copper and replicating Masson
Mm-hmm.
is a big one for us as well. So that's
You've got
we're gonna be pretty
significant
good.
news flow
Yeah.
coming in the next 9 months. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
so then how does your exploration work in WA actually compare to the other mining companies there?
As in other mining companies in Western Australia, or
Yeah,
are you
exactly.
talking
The
in
exploration
general? Yeah.
carrying on.
Yeah. Look, I suppose what's unique about us is, again, like as I was saying at the start, we're in a brand new greenstone belt. So that is all open. So, the first couple of years really about getting a lot of EM surveys done, and they've proven to be successful.
Hmm.
So we're a little bit different in as much as when you've got that greenstone belt with not a lot of information, you've got to build that data set up. And that's what we've been doing. We've also, obviously brought CSRO, Curtin, GSWA in. We've appointed Dr. John Simmons, who's a copper-nickel magmatic systems expert
Hmm.
and recognised. So a lot of it's put that expertise around what we've found so far. So where we're different, a lot of the mining company or exploration companies in Western Australia are exploring, in a lot of cases,
Hmm.
along strike from a known deposit or structural environment. There are obviously ones that are a bit like us, and you're out somewhere where no one's been, but to a large degree, that's the go. So there's generally a recipe or a methodology they can follow without having to do, what did we do? 2,417 line and a lot of soil sampling as well. So, we had to start grassroots to build it to where it is. So
Sure.
that was the baseline activity to get us to where we are now. I suppose in the next year or so, we'll start, I suppose, looking a lot more like a traditional exploration company, drilling holes, because a lot of the targeting work is either done or is in progress with the other expertise that we brought in.
Okay.
So, I think our real, I think there'll be a fair bit of drilling coming up in the next year or so. And not only the gallium at Block 3 and the nickel or copper nickel at Masson, but
Mhm.
lookalikes. I think we'll go after some of those.
Music to our investors' ears. Now, look, I want to go back through to the last question here. I understand at the moment your market capitalization is actually only at $12 million. So, I guess for investors who are now currently watching Nimy Resources, I mean, what's the key takeaway from this update? And I want to also disclose that we do understand some of our investors have actually participated in one of the raisings. So, what
Yeah.
message do you have to those who are looking to join on the sidelines and those who have already invested into Nimy Resources?
Yeah. Well, suppose that, if you talk about the investor base, a lot of the investors that we have been with us from the start. All
Yes.
right. So they've hung in there. And I think, a lot of them have understood that, this is a process when you're in a new environment, new greenstone belt. So, I'm eternally grateful that they've stuck by us. For new investors, I think the timing's pretty good. I mean, we've got a discovery around gallium, which is obviously a fairly exotic metal in terms of no one knows a lot about it
Mhm.
or didn't, but that is building. And the fundamentals around gallium, if everything that people are saying and forecasting comes to fruition, then it could be a really interesting place to be. But other than that, or aside from that, we've got the work around Masson, and copper's nothing to be sneezed at either. So, Masson and Masson lookalikes are what we're after. So I suppose the takeaway is, we're not drilling at the end of some known deposit hoping for a hit that may or may not be commercial. We're in a new area. We've done a lot of work and we've made two significant discoveries.
Mhm.
Gallium, and we'll lead with copper, but it's copper nickel PGEs that are part of that assemblage. So, we're not looking for, places still to drill or, without information or on the end of some other deposit. It's a lot of work's been done over the last 3 years to get us where we're at.
Sure.
and to unlock this greenstone belt. And there'll be a lot of work in the next year and a lot of drilling, I would imagine. That's where this is going to go, particularly when CSIRO and Craton hand down their findings.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to really direct us in terms of where do we drill next, for Masson lookalikes and even at Masson. So as an investor, I don't like the fact that we're 12, our market cap's 12 million, because I think we're a lot better than that. Whatever the circumstances are that have got us there. Again, our investor base has been very loyal. And for those that are coming in, there's a lot of upside in what I've described during this interview, I think, and also going forward, we've got the recipe now in terms of unlocking copper, and the gallium. We're step out drilling it, we're infill drilling it, and we're looking at a resource, and we've made those connections into markets that no one would have been aware of in terms of gallium, if you like. So we've gone pretty early with M2i. So we're setting up post discovery. If we come through with a really attractive gallium resource, then we're set up to get it to market. And I think that's going to be one of the things that differentiates companies. As we said, I think at the outset, the world's a funny place at the moment. Geopolitically, it's a bit all over the shop. The thing that isn't wavering, though, is, the critical metals requirement. And, I think we're way ahead of the pack when it comes to gallium. And I think we're doing quite well when it comes to the copper, with a lot of upside. So that's where we sit, and I think that's what makes it attractive.
Thank you very much, Luke. I'm excited. Well, look, how about this? If any of our investors or our viewers have any questions, would it be okay that they email us info@eastcoastresearch.com.au or info@sharesandvalue.com.au, and we'll pass it through to you and your investor relations team to respond?
Yeah, no problem.
That's exciting. Well, good luck. I'm sure we may see each other again later this year.
Yeah, I would think so.
Thank you.
Thank you.